I'm Shauna with Heritage Creations Cut Flowers. I'm in Zone 8A in North Carolina. In the past, I've only sold at my farm stand. I have a farm stand out front. This year, I was able to scale up and I have been selling bouquets to a market close to me, and then also to two florists, and then also I've done a flower bucket subscription to a business close to me, a small business. So in that regard, I have run out of, not technically run out of flowers, but really been close to running out of flowers for all the things. So the last thing I have been doing is filling this farm stand. That's the last thing I do. So I have been selling out a lot at the farm stand because I don't have as many bouquets to put in the farm stand. Therefore, we have expanded and we've added woodies, which really isn't going to help with the farm stand per se, but I wanted to add something that I could use more to sell to florists, because I have enjoyed selling to florists this year, and that to me has been a really good outlet, sales outlet. So I wanted to scale that up, and one way that I felt was a good way to scale that up was putting in some woodies. Now those aren't gonna, I'm not really going to see the benefits of that next year per se. I might see a little bit, but sort of like putting in peonies, you have to wait. So there's that. But also this next year I'm scaling up in the amount of flowers that I have, specifically in the amount of flowers that I have in one variety. Typically in the past, because I have a flower stand, I've done mixed colors, like in my Lisianthus, I would get a mix. My zinnias, a mix, that kind of thing. It's much harder to sell to florists with a mix because they like to buy in certain colors and that kind of thing. So this year I did not do any mixes. I have my crop plan in place, and this year it's just straight colors of certain things. I have scaled up in the amount of certain things that I'm growing and scaled back in that I'm not growing some things, meaning I'm not growing Nigella, I'm not growing Orlea. There's certain things like that, which are all great and they're great fillers and that kind of thing, but I needed to grow more Bells of Ireland. So I have a limited amount of space, so I kind of had to figure out which was more profitable. Bells of Ireland, Bupleurum, those are more profitable than Nigella and Orlea for me personally. So that's why I cut those two out, and instead of growing half a row of Bupleurum and half a row of Bells of Ireland, I'm growing a whole row of Bells of Ireland, that kind of thing. So since we're out here, let me just show you around. Last year I did add several perennials, so this is sort of the perennial section. This is Lady's Mantle, and then I stuck some Agastache in the middle there to see how that would do. So we'll see if that comes back next year. But I have a whole row of the Lady's Mantle, and I'm hoping that that will bloom this coming year, because that will be year number 2. And then I've talked about this. This is my row of phlox, which I definitely have already paid for this year and more. I profited off this row of really just probably about half a row of the phlox right there. And then I'm going to fill this rest of the row in with phlox. Here we have Geum right here, and then mountain mint and eucalyptus. This is my row of dahlias. Yes, I planted more than this, but what happened was several tubers rotted, some didn't sprout, all the things. So I'm hoping that the ones that are doing really well here, that I'll get more tubers and I can kind of spread those out. So these have been helping me out. This is the first year I've really had several dahlias to kind of help me out in the fall. I don't know, not a good dahlia grower here in the South. I want the ball kind, and I want ones that do well in the South. So any suggestions, drop them in the comments, because I need some help. And then you can see this was an overwintered eucalyptus Been cutting off of all that eucalyptus. And then the one in the back is a willow type of eucalyptus, which is new this year. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it or not. The leaves are really big, so it kind of would only work for like large installments or something. And then if you've seen past videos, last year in this over here, last year we had compost brought in by a company and dumped, and we made rows up here. Everything that grew up here grew short, and it was terrible compost, and so we've had to scrape all that away, put it over here basically, and some of it we expanded these rows. So from about where the tall one is on the eucalyptus up, we expanded the rows. A lot of that grew short. Like these eucalyptus are tiny because they're growing in, I call it the short dirt. So I don't know, we have to fix that. But anyway, I've had plenty of eucalyptus back there to cut off of, so that's worked out perfectly, and we'll figure out this other stuff. Here's a succession of sunflowers, and behind that is some baptisia that I put in last year. It did not flower this year, so hopefully this coming year it will flower. It will be in the second year. These are the purple sunfill, which I think are pretty cute. This is really the first year kind of growing these. They're smaller than I thought. I'll put my hand there. Anyway, I thought they would be bigger according to the picture, but you know how that goes. So anyway, these are the purple sunfill. I have some of these. And then just regular Pro Cut orange. So these are all different successions. Some more sunflowers. And then behind there, these peppers. Alright, so here are the peppers. This is what they look like. So how good is that for fall, right? And then I have this whole row back here. This is bee balm. Now I have this. This is Peter Cottontail yarrow. I definitely used it at the beginning of the season, and then I cut it back, and then it was really hard to harvest because they were all different lengths. So then we cut it back again, and then this is as tall as it's gotten so far. So I'm still on the fence about the Peter Cottontail yarrow. I actually love the way it looks, and I loved it at the beginning of the season. But I want it all to get one length and be tall enough, because look how cute. You want all that, but basically what I want is I want it to be one height all at the same time, and then I'll just, chop it all off and go through it, because I don't want to have to pick through each stem. Does that make sense? So the verdict is still out on the Peter Cottontail yarrow. And then up here is just more yarrow that I'm leaving in to see what it's going to do in the second year. We'll see about that. Okay, this row, this is getting ready to get all chopped down. In 2 weeks, I have snapdragons plugs coming, and this is one row that the snapdragons are getting put in. So this has got to be cleared out. Here. All right, over here I've got all my mums. Take a look at all of these mums. Oh, super sunny. I don't have my sunglasses. All right, so now we're in the mums, and I've got some white mums here. Down this row, these are my earliest mums right here. And then back here, I can't wait for these right here to bloom, but they all fell over. So I'm not really sure how that's going to go. So we're going to have to see about that one. So these are actually my favorite. I definitely like these. These are getting ready to, this one, you know, is a good size to cut right now. So I have some of those. And the one I just showed you, this is a huge patch of that. That should have been staked and wasn't, and it's falling down. So we'll see how that goes. These should have been staked. So my fault on that. These really don't need to be staked. They kind of stake themselves. But they're super branchy, so I have to cut these and kind of cut off a lot of the side shoots. So, all right, here are all the woody rows. We have them planted, irrigation set, and mulched. So we're super excited about that. 4 rows over here. Those are peonies that were planted last year. If you've seen that debacle, we had to move them, and we're not sure if those are going to live. So, and then we have more peonies coming for the rows over there that are covered. This we would call the middle garden right here. We do have 1 row of woodies here because this gets stays kind of wet, and those needed to stay wet, the sugar shack. So I have, again, in 2 weeks, plugs coming that are going to be going here. These have all been new dirt, fertilized, gypsum down, and irrigation down. Pretty much under, oh, and then topped with leaf mulch. Everything is done here. We just need to top it with leaf mulch. Then we'll put plastic over it to help with the weeds. This part of this bed has been direct seeded with larkspur, and then, so that's 1/3 of the bed. And then the other 2/3 was going to be blue plum. I ran out of seed, so I only got 1/3 of it with blue plum, and then the rest here at the end, I've been trying to keep the weeds out. I need to seed that. So I don't know how this is going to turn out. There's so many weeds, it's hard to figure out. I'm trying to keep the weeds down. I'm not sure what's blue plum and what's larkspur, so I don't know. This might be a fail. But over here, it was much easier to tell what was Bells of Ireland and what wasn't. So I was able to do that, and then where I had some clumps of Bells of Ireland and where I didn't have any Bells of Ireland, I just recently spread those all out. Everything's taking a hold really well. So fingers crossed I will have a whole row of Bells of Ireland. All right, lower, middle garden. This is the pollinator area, which I'm really glad we did put in. We've had lots of monarchs, caterpillars in here, monarchs, all the bees, all the things. I think this has been a good idea and been helpful. And then, of course, we have some hydrangeas in here that I will be able to cut off of next year. So that'll be helpful. I've also have some echinacea in here that I'll be able to cut off of. So there's a few things in here I can cut off of. Also, in here, I have cut a lot off of the sedum that's in here. There's also sedum down there. So, and these are all just dahlias that I started from seed. They're so open-faced, they don't do well in bouquets, so I haven't really cut off of those. This is the upper garden. This row is finished. We've got it covered and ready. We're going to put anemones here. The reason I'm putting anemones here is this is the most shaded row here. And my thought process is that the soil will stay the coolest here, and hopefully I'll get the longest life out of my anemones as possible. And then when I do anemones, I don't pull up the corms. I pretty much just cut them off. So you can see some have popped up. This is where I had anemones last year. But this row is going to be seeded or done with plugs that are coming. And then I still have a succession of sunflowers here. This is the first time I've done a black sunflower. Look at this one. That's pretty cool. So we'll see how that goes. It has a lot of, I don't know if it's supposed to be branching, but whatever. And then this succession of sunflowers, I really did just cut down. I was cutting these. These are Oklahoma salmon zinnias. Let me tell you what, these have been in for so long. All these zinnias look terrible as far as mold, powdery mildew, I meant, and whatever's going on there. They are still pumping out some blooms. I mean, the good ones that don't, you know. Anyway, these things have saved me several times. So, I highly recommend Oklahoma zinnias. There's some lemon bee balm that I just let go. Cut that down when I cut this whole row. And of course, there's the mahogany splendor. There, in that other row, is the apples of Peru. And then the marigolds, I've been cutting a ton off of those. The cosmos, those are kind of new, so I can still cut those. And then lots of old zinnias there that really just need to be cut down. And then this was another succession of sunflowers and then some old zinnias there. Aside from the sunflowers I have been succession planting those all year. Aside from those, this is the only real row that I planted specifically for fall. And I really haven't gotten much use out of my basil for some reason. Well, I know actually the reason. We've been in a drought and I don't think I watered this enough and it just kind of started looking crappy. So I haven't really gotten any use out of that. But the marigolds have done really well, so I've been cutting off of those. And then this is actually a new succession of zinnias that, because everything else has powdery mildew, it does as well. You know, still putting off more stems, but you know how that goes. And then I have a whole nother succession of sunflowers here, and then the cosmos there and there are new. Okay, so that was a tour of the garden and the expansion that we're doing and what I have planned this coming with my plugs. Typically I seed everything but I learned last year that it was more cost effective for me to buy Snapdragon plugs, because when I do Snapdragons, I have terrible germination. So I've got several Snapdragon plugs coming in 2 weeks, and then I have Status, which I get terrible germination on that, and Dianthus, which I get terrible germination on that. In 2 weeks I have all those plugs coming, so I'm trying to get all these beds ready and have enough beds ready for those plugs that are coming. That's why I've stuck sunflowers, as you've seen, in several different places, because I can't put them in certain beds because I know that I need to put my Snapdragons in those beds, or Status, or whatever's coming. So I have that coming, and not everything's coming in 2 weeks, I should say. I've got it staggered a little bit, like it starts in 2 weeks and then the next week something else comes and something else comes. That way we can kind of get it all planted out and get it ready. Our typical first frost is usually end of October, 1st of November. And then I do have a hoop house in the back side of the property over there, and this year is the first year that I'm going to try and plant actual flowers in the hoop house and see if I can overwinter flowers in the hoop house and if they will bloom earlier, and to see if I can get some flowers for Easter. That's a total gamble. I don't know if it'll happen. I don't know, we'll see. It's an experiment. So those are the last flowers that I have coming, and those are actually the end of October, because they're going in the hoop house and I don't really have to worry about frost in the hoop house. It's not a heated hoop house, but since obviously it's covered, I don't have to worry about the frost. So there's that. Happened to be out here showing you around, and look, the donkey decides he wants to take a dirt bath. This is now his new favorite spot. This is where we had all the dirt from making the new rows, and we've used it all. So there's a good, patch of dirt left there for him to take his little dirt bath. Don't even try to keep a donkey clean. Right? Right, girls? You done with your dirt bath?